All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, 9:05 a.m. My name is Ty Menzer, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier and Commissioner Rachel Grant. We have Commissioner Carolina Mejia and Commissioner Emily Klaus virtually, County Manager Leonard Hernandez, Assistant County Manager Josh Cummings, and Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. The meeting, it will be recorded and posted to the YouTube channel within 24 hours. Written public comment may be received up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and distributed to the Board of County Commissioners. Action will be taken at this meeting. We have a few miscellaneous items this morning. The first up is jail space crisis work group report. And we have stakeholders and team members from work group here with us. County Manager, you want to set us up?
Yeah, I'll just frame it. Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. We met several times as the Jail Space Crisis Work Group. We really appreciate the sheriff's team for highlighting this item as an important conversation, and thankful to the board for establishing a few commissioners to sit on this group and to work with all our stakeholders. During the course of several meetings, what was discovered was that we need to narrow down our options to move this conversation forward and to then identify what research we need to do within those options. So from the last meeting till now, there were 3 options that are identified, and these are options that, what I'll say, commissioners, options for more exploration, not necessarily options to act on right now, because the central service team and probably the sheriff's team and maybe some others will have to do additional research. 3 options at a high level are: 1, expand the existing jail. That's called the Plex unit option. The second option is renovate a dorm of the existing jail. And then the third option is to explore the juvenile facility. Again, there's a lot of conversation that needs to take place and research on any of these options. But those are the ones that were narrowed down from our last meeting and discussed to be brought forward for a conversation with county commissioners. With that, I'll just hand back over to you, Chair, to see if any of the stakeholders have any perspectives or comments they would like to make.
The sheriff is walking in here in a second. He got delayed as like I did. Had to change a flat tire. Sorry. Start over. So
Get him into.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning.
I know he'll have some.
Perfect. So Sheriff, all we did is just basically say that there were 3 options looked at and they were named. That was about no discussion yet. And so we're just kind of opening it up for conversation and perspectives, thoughts, based on the county manager was emphasizing that each of the 3 things kind of looked at a high level would need additional exploration. But if you'd like to jump in.
To recap, we talked about the Plex unit, expand existing jail, renovate a dorm of the existing jail, or the juvenile facility. And looking at what options that may hold, with the context that any one of these options or all 3 of these options would take a lot more exploration, would probably commissioners take dollars to initiate studies. We need to bring expert folks in-house to help us size up any of these to get costing, et cetera.
Yeah, I would just say, out of all of these, the only one that's truly short-term, I guess, would be maybe 2 or 3. Number 1 is not a short-term solution. That's I guess from my own opinion, number 1 is something that we don't have a choice in doing. I think we have to explore the future of what the second half of our jail is supposed to be. It's only half built, and everyone I think in here knows that our jail is half built. So I think 1, my request to the county manager was to get board direction to start figuring. I know we always want to talk about a regional jail and partnering with the cities. The cities are tired of booking, 30 miles outside their city or whatever. The problem is we don't know what we're asking for. We don't know what the cost is. So when we go to the city of Olympia, let's say, because they're always wanting to explore this idea, there's no baseline understanding of so what's the ask? What's the cost? What kind of money do we need to find, through the state, through grants or whatnot? And I think that's causing this perpetual just spin the wheels kind of thing of we want to partner. Okay, how much? No one knows. Does anyone want to, do a study? Not really. And so, because no one wants to talk about building more jail space. and I understand that. So I guess my request to the county manager was to try and get board direction to at least start exploring what a 2030 cost of the flex unit would actually be. I want to say the last cost was around 20 million or so, maybe roughly, give or take 5 million, somewhere in there.
High 20s.
High 20s,
28
25
in my
million.
head.
Yeah, but that was in 2017, 2018, 19.
Yeah.
So add a little inflation in there, add a little inflation to that. The renovation of a dorm, I personally oppose. That was just the conversation we had. I'm not in favor of kind of like the courthouse thing that we're doing. I'm not in favor of spending money on something that's not gonna help us in the long term. So we renovate a dorm and let's say we're able to add 40 cells, we just eliminated 68 beds. So to trade cell space for bed space, I'm gonna be right back in here in 5 years saying I don't have enough space for my dorms. I need more beds for dorms. So to me, it would be kind of spending money in something that is just going to push the problem a little bit further down the road. And then number 3, obviously, I won't even comment on at this point. It's the juvenile facility. Obviously, budget impacts have happened since we had our last meeting, so I don't even really want to get into the nitty gritty of juvenile and renovating that. That was the closest thing I could think of that we had celled space available right this moment. But I guess the point of this jail crisis work group is that we got the smartest people together that we could, and there's not really a short-term solution. So I think in lieu of that, the best thing we can do is try to expedite a long-term solution of some sort, because
Is it worth mentioning, since not everybody that's here was in our work group, although a lot of people were, but like the contract and because people may have questions about
yeah,
the ability to contract out for some limited need and how the pitfalls there or the.
yeah, so we have obviously contract housing, which we're cutting in our budget as part of our budget cuts. Currently, we don't have any inmates under contract housing. We haven't in quite some time, quite a few years since we've contracted out. And the reason for that is that we had a number of jails reach out and say, yeah, we'd love to we need money, like, let's send your money our way and we'll take your inmates. The problem is they'll take all the people in our dorms, all of the, the DUI who's serving a sentence in the dorm. They'll take like the really low risk, non-violent offenders. They'll take those
They
individuals.
really don't even book hardly.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they'll take those individuals. Who they will not take are people who are experiencing mental health crises. They will not take people who are, violent murderers. They won't take those individuals who sit in our jail for an extended period of time. So the contract housing, the reason we haven't spent any of those dollars is because we would just be spending money to send inmates that we already have space for to another facility, which doesn't make sense, obviously. So
I think it's the hard reality is when you talk about a long-term solutions like building up on the flex unit, there's no appetite anywhere to fund more cell space. Like that seems to be the hard reality is like there's no desire and there's no money for it, and it's almost like if you go out with the potential of building out more cell space, like you're gonna get sued by, DAW or any of these other groups that are just completely against it. And then I still have a hard time wrestling with, and maybe it's just I'm too simple-minded, but we need cell space and we have an abundance of empty cells throughout county facilities, including, I know maybe it's not the answer, but it's a it's a fact. Right? I mean, you have how large, and I'm not saying this is the answer. It's just hard for my reptilian brain to reconcile that we have empty cells and we have people that need to be put in cells and you can't force those things to work. Maybe I gotta think on that more.
The 80-bed facility, it had a plan to be a 120-bed facility in the future, but system changes, philosophy changes, other things. Budget changed in 08, 09, and I wasn't here then, but we limited admissions, length of stay, some other internal operations, did more alternative to detention, basically cut the building in half. So we operate with 2 units, which is 40 beds. we have taken most of the units that we weren't using to keep the 2 units operational. And that continues to be a problem. Now we don't have a control system, which is a whole nother conversation and debate, but we're working on it. All right. And then we have to have a detention facility. The county is by law. And I understand it looks like the unit is open, but like Sheriff was talking, I read the other day, you know, one of the units he's using at the jail or some space at the jail is for training. We use one of our units for staff training, and we've also opened that up to I think it was City of Olympia came in, police department, and did some training in the unit. And the other unit basically is staged for our youth development program, for detention alternatives and the garden. So we're making some use of that space, but I understand from the outside looking in, it's like we just have these empty cells. But they don't have locks, they don't have full lighting, don't have controls in that unit. There's some internal problems with that. So, and then again, where do we go? Because we can't house adult offenders with juvenile offenders. So.
I see you, Commissioner Mejia, but I had a follow-up on that. If I could, I guess a question maybe for the sheriff or chief, but like when we shut down those ideas, and again, we were looking at also the old jail under the thing and now like the operational costs of having, so I guess my question is, if we think about the juvenile facility, let's just say it was easier to do something, what would that, and I know you haven't, like, can't crunch the numbers, but in comparing if you had inmates at the juvenile facility, that's a second location, and it's across the street, but it's a second location, versus having them in the old jail, like what's the difference there, I guess is my question. It's a second facility, right? I mean, there's a little bit of transportation difference, but is there something that would be substantively different in terms of running the second operation out of the juvenile facility versus running it out of Hilltop, if I'll call it that?
No.
Okay, so.
I would say the only thing that's been even remotely identified by Leonard's team, county manager's team, has been that the youth services is in better shape than the old jail is. I think
Like the
that was
physical-
something that came up, was like the initial
Certainly true.
buildup would be cheaper because going to the old jail was gonna require like a new HVAC system, all these brand new upgrades for a building that we're not keeping. And that's kind of where I'm getting at with this. And that's why I'm appreciative of the way the county has shifted gears of not investing money into things that we're not gonna keep and don't help us in the long term kind of thing, right? Like, why do we dump money into the old jail if the county's trying to dump that property off and get rid of it? And simultaneously, that's why I was a little more comfortable with youth services, at least, because any investment we make into youth services stays. I don't think anyone plans on getting rid of that facility, the family court facility. So, you know, initially when I was going through this in my mind was like, all right, contract out youth services for 2 years. Move let's say move our female inmates into the youth services and then renovate that building. Then when we figure out a long-term plan for the main jail, move our inmates back over there and youth services has a brand new facility type thing. That was my initial headspace when we were going into this. Obviously, we then had all the budget things that were.
I understand that adult offenders can't mix with the youth offenders, but there has to be ways physically to make that not happen.
It's not just physical though, it's sound. So
There
I
has to be
can,
ways to
we can put
mitigate
you
that as
between
well.
two walls so you can't see the guy next to you, but if he can communicate with you,
Commissioner Mejia, sorry.
But there's always ways.
yeah.
I was going to ask in regards to a study and like how much, because I'm also thinking, right, the state has the jail task force group. How much would a study cost to get those numbers on how much it would take to kind of add that flex unit?
Yeah, we would need to work with our capital improvements team, probably go out to bid. We can gather that information up and get a rough kind of order of magnitude of what it would cost to do this study and bring that back. I think that's the direction we're looking for. I agree with the sheriff that there's been Josh uses this great word called spinergy. There's just this spin on this topic. And without a plan, it's hard then to articulate where we could go and what those costs are. If the county were to direct us to do that, we would, and we can do it in phases. We could come back and say, this is what we've evaluated, what a study would take, how long it would take, how much it would cost. And the board can make a decision at that point to then say, yes, we want to move forward, or how do we fund that? And then start that process about what does it look like to develop a plan for the flex unit. And we can take old plans as well. I mean, we're not starting from scratch here. So it's not, there has been work, as a sheriff and other commissioners have indicated, has been done. It may be 10 years old. So there is some proverbial dust we have to blow off of that and recalibrate it to today, understanding codes, et cetera. But at least it's a starting point.
Sure.
I just wanted to reply to Commissioner Fournier's response that there's not an appetite for this. I kind of disagree. I think that if you just talk about like, hey, what does it look like to just put more people in jail? Sure, you know, it's probably split on that. There are some people who just want people to get booked off into jail and go to prison and don't want to have to think about them. And then there's the other half of like, well, what about alternatives? I do think that there is a lot of energy behind finding a solution to these problems that have always persisted, right? We have a ton of mentally ill people inside of our jail, and everyone's wondering why. Well, the answer is because they've still committed crimes. So, you know, just because, you know, you suffer from schizophrenia doesn't mean that if you stab your parents to death that, well, mentally ill, so nothing happens, right? They still have to sit in our jail. And then now the state has solved one problem, which is now we have competency hearings occurring quickly. So we're getting these individuals who are experiencing very obvious mental illness, and we're shipping them off to Western State, and we're getting them back. And then from there, they have this why in the road of like, okay, are we going down the civil commitment path, or are we going down the trial path? The issue is that when they come back, you might have individuals who are still suffering from mental illness, but they are competent enough to stand trial. That's still, in my opinion, a mentally ill person who's sitting inside of our jail, who's gonna sit there for 1-2 years while they stand their murder trial, which takes lots of time to gather that information. Meanwhile, you know, we do our best to provide medical, to provide treatment inside the jail. We have DCRs, Olympic Health and Recovery Services in there every day, but it's not a mental health facility. And I think that's like the piece that people I think are having a hard time understanding is like what we really need. And I think where there would be a lot of energy behind is if our flex unit, whatever we did, became a hybrid model of, you know, half of it is jail space because we need that for people who are just, you know, belligerently drunk and mad and want to fight. And then we also need, you know, some sort of like mental health triage area that could serve as two functions. One, for first responders to take people to ITA them for short-term issues. And two, a place where the person who is experiencing significant mental health issues, but is competent to stand trial, can actually spend their time pre-trial.
Well, wasn't that the vision for that building in front of the jail, that we have some
Telecare?
kind of contract with some agency and they don't respond to our needs?
Yes.
So that's the gist of it? So like they exist, but
Yes.
they're not cooperating with us doing that?
Well, I think just the shift in priorities and what they're doing, they've turned into a long-term facility.
So
Which
we have a contract with them for that we can, well, it's our building, right?
They're a
so.
bed, they're, and
Yeah, I was gonna say, so crisis triage, so there's these different ways that go about treating or different time periods that people can be triaged or, you know, ITA'd. And so the telecare and these different agencies, you know, they have like, you know, 15-day and 30-day, and they have these different ways that they can do contracts. But the crisis triage beds that we opened in Thurston County in the last few years, the agencies themselves couldn't keep them going because they weren't having enough people coming in. And so we've lost those beds. So this new mental health crisis center that we just contracted with, the one that's coming down the road from Connections that we've been talking about, that will have what we're discussing here, right? They'll have multiple different kinds of I don't know how to say it, but different levels
That
where,
doesn't exist yet, right?
no, it just
It has to
doesn't
be built and
exist.
Created.
We thought it was gonna work with the telecare. I say we. The state of Washington thought that it was going to work with these crisis triage beds maybe 5 years ago, and it didn't work. You know, we found that people are just going back out. They're going back to jail. you know, and so it was just this revolving door and they're not getting enough money to stay operational. So they've closed their doors. And so we've had a couple of those close in Thurston County. So this new one that will be coming online will offer ITA, will offer hardened cells, will offer a drop off for those kinds of people that Sheriff Sanders is talking about. You know, it still won't offer the highest level of security because we won't have we're not gonna have patrol, you know, inside the this crisis triage center, but it will offer 45 days and 90 days and instead of just 30 days.
And that would be huge.
Right.
Like a place, cause right now, when, you know, someone is in the middle of Martin Way throwing rocks at cars, we have two options. We can book them into the jail for malicious mischief and disorderly conduct, you know, or we could ITA them, right? Where now we're going down the mental health. And I think most deputies have the mindset of like, most of the time, let's get this person some mental health treatment. But the only solution right now is to take them to St. Peter's Hospital, which has 4 cells for a county of 300,000 people, and stick them in a hallway for 3 hours until St. Peter's can just check the box and get them back out the door. I've had people that we've ITA'd that the same shift, I'm dealing with them doing the same thing, just in a different spot. And it's like, okay, like how do we, like, that's clearly not a solution. So I do think that there's a lot of energy behind this. And I do think that that the citizens would be very interested in any kind of proposal that we brought forward to them if we actually outlined specific solutions of like, hey, here's what we're going to do and here's our plan to get there.
But that's not new jail space. That's kind of a different
That
concept.
could be. It could be. I think that you can build something onto the jail that's like
calling
a
it
mental health wing.
More jail space probably, like in my mind, that like kills the
You
idea.
message it
Yeah.
differently.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
mean,
think
We could call it
I
diversion.
think that what
Yeah.
Commissioner Grant's talking about, that would be a great resource for the police officers and people on shift, the fire departments. But it won't solve what we have in the jail, because once those people are released from the hospitals and now they're in the crime status, like the sheriff was talking about, they're stuck in the jail, and we might send them to Western State and then they come back, but the jail is not equipped to house these mentally ill people. It is problemsome all around, and they need individual cells, and that's what they're eating up from us in the jail, the individual cells that our high violent offenders should be in. And then those high violent offenders can't be by them, or can't be in there with them, so they overflow into our dorms and it just compiles. So I think even if that other facility's opened up, we're still gonna need a place that the jail has the ability to deal with people that are severely mentally ill. and
to
stuck in our
answer
system.
your question, I think where the disconnect is that the jail does not possess the ability to force medications on anyone. So that's the difference between us and a mental health facility.
Right.
So when
So
someone
what's the
comes in
story
and they're
with that
screaming and they're
right in front of the
banging
jail?
their head, we
Oh,
manage that.
There's a facility, an institution right in front of the jail that
So-
houses
That's
mentally.
triage. So
Yeah.
if you're in crisis, and I'll use this as a good example, a gentleman was in crisis over in Pasco. They needed a bed for him. The only bed they could find in the state was the triage center. So they brought him all the way over here and put him in triage, and then he assaulted them. So then he got arrested out of triage and came over to the jail.
Yeah.
And the ITA process started all over again. So
But
we're,
is there a physical facility that is sitting there that we have contracted with somebody?
that is not ours. So that's not ours.
That's not our building.
No, that we have no contract with them at all.
The county doesn't own that building.
I don't know if the county
property.
owns it, but we don't know what's going on in it.
part. But the county owns that physical, right? Somebody,
I believe so.
right? There's a physical building.
Yeah,
We own the
there-
building.
that is-
we own the
We own the
building.
And we have a contract with some agency.
Yeah.
We have
They
a.
lease
That out.
They
Okay.
lease it, yes.
It came with the idea. I think that when that first started, the idea was what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
it was.
And then it converted into, we
So
have
is it
no.
not meeting,
Yeah.
is it not
You wanna
meeting our
suggest
needs?
evicting the state out of there and doing our own
Is
thing?
it not meeting our needs? And is there a way to intervene and use that?
They
Maybe not.
initially, when they opened and a mentally ill person came in, I called triage. Hey, my little Johnny here, this is what's going on. Triage came over, interviewed him. They would detain him and take them next door. That happened for, I don't know, 6 or 9 months, and then it kind of get lost, and then it was happening, and then they wouldn't come over, and then they would, and it just became this hodgepodge mess, and then it just blew up and went away.
What happened was I
Very
explored this when I first became a commissioner. I've forgotten, I'm not jumping into this because I've forgotten a lot of the details and I'll misspeak, but it was basically explained to me, because I was immediately on the BHSO board, that it was set up just like you say, and just like you described, and then it was kind of like that backlog that the sheriff alluded to, where they couldn't get people out, like, so people were going there and then just, they were stuck there, which is, it gummed up, like there were 9 beds or whatever, and like within 6 or 9 months, it was like there was no, people could, it mold, because it was financially more expedient and there wasn't the flow through the system to, on the back end to get people through, and it just ended up being gummed up like really quickly within a year. And it just, it stopped becoming what we had conceived of it being. And there didn't seem to be, and I can't explain it, but I tried to explore, well, how do we fix that? And and I didn't really get anywhere with that. I don't remember all the details of it because it's been
Is
7
there
years now.
opportunity there that we're missing, I guess, because we're not managing the relationship or leveraging the
It's 9 beds.
16.
It's up to
16.
16.
They're usually 16.
They've
bed facilities.
expanded it a couple of times. Go ahead, Commissioner. Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. Just to get us back on the, like, next steps conversation, I am interested in finding out what that phase 1 would look like that whole study. I would want to take it a step further though, and kind of not just look at, our adult jail, but also just our whole jail system as a whole, like juvenile included. Because I just think that I don't like surprises later on, right? If we're gonna be doing a study about, our jail and kind of how much that's going to cost, I want to be secure that, like, we're not going to go through this path and then later on, we're gonna have something emergency pop up in juvenile that, we need. I would rather have that holistic view. So I think that's a really good approach, for at least the board to have the full information on how to move forward, because of course then, whatever study comes out, the conversation then is going to be like, how do we pay for it too? So
Commissioner Grant, and I just, as a preview to what I think you're gonna say, like, she and I have had a couple of long conversations recently, and kind of flowing from the conversation that we had in the boardroom and during the budget, and all, as we deal with this problem, which is a specific problem, but a difficult problem financially. There's been different other ideas discussed about the jail, whether it's regional jail or, community corrections, all this stuff, and like wondering, can we like, if we're gonna study, the pieces, they all kind of fit together in weird ways. It's like, there might be something that unlocks a financial tool that helps us with this anyway, but
Yeah.
Commissioner Grant.
Well,
go
and
ahead.
I'll read that kind of, we put our heads together yesterday and came up with just a little bit of a list of maybe what all encompass all of this and solve all of the things we're talking about, which is, we need real numbers for, we need an RFP out for a qualified firm that can come back and give us real numbers on financing models for a long-term solution and a short-term solution. And feasibility and cost comparisons, operational management models, which is what I think Carolina is alluding to, which is, what are the different kinds of models that could work, regional partnership and cost sharing opportunities. And that's the other big thing, right? Is that we need to be talking about, we have a lot of moving parts going on in the next several years with regional partnerships, and we could be, benefiting from some of that. And then implementation timelines that will align with public safety, behavioral health, and our fiscal goals. And so we wrote this little kind of list up, and I forwarded it to the county managers just a little while ago. But that's kind of what we were thinking. It's the whole system kind of needs to be looked at with actual numbers that come back and say, here are the different things we can do.
Because if I, not where we are now, but like when I tried to initiate a conversation about regional jail, it was about the flex unit. Like, that was my motivation. At the time, Olympia was closing its jail, and they don't anymore, but at the time they had like $20 million. They were looking at they were actually looking at feasibility of buildings to like make a new jail. And I was like, well, hold the presses here. Like, we need a $28 million flex unit. You need to build a $23 million jail. Like, why don't we put this together somehow? So I got TRPC involved and doing stakeholder interviews and blah, 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 and it all kind of collapsed. But that was my motivation at the beginning, was that these two things like could help. So I'm just showing that like there is connection, and there could be like mutual there could be pieces of this question that help solve other pieces of the question. So I guess Commissioner Grant and I were discussing, just kind of, yes, doing what Sheriff Sanders is proposing, but yes, and, if we could build a little bit bigger scope, like work together with county manager or to kind of come up with a scope that would be a little more comprehensive. Commissioner Grant seemed to believe there were I don't know, but you seem to think there were appropriate consultants out there on the market that could do that kind of a comprehensive look at
know there are
operational,
three.
and looking at numbers, like is there something we're not thinking about that saves money over the long term and helps us? I mean, we need to know those things, because I think this is a tough nut to crack. I think Commissioner Fournier's comments up front are not wrong. I mean, it's almost a bipartisan, I think there's a way to get what Sheriff Sanders is talking about, where I think Whatcom County did this effectively over a long period of time, like come up with something that's broader and messaged differently. But when you talk about just building jail space, it's pretty much bipartisan opposition is what I've seen. I mean, it's rough to get, to think about getting public support for whether it's bonds or whatnot. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I like the more global look at things, like I hear about like that. What is the space, the triage in front of there? Like telecare, yeah, like there's another space where we put something together and it worked for a minute and then it stopped working and then we didn't, I don't know what happened, but like there's a missed opportunity and there's something going on there that's not aligning with what we need. And then we say we don't have jail space, but then we have physical jail space coming out of our ears. Like as far as like physical space, we have vacant rooms at multiple places all over the county where there's cells. So it's like, I want to understand that more. I like the idea of including the FJC in there. And I have a hard time with the idea of empty space in there when there's needs for it all over the state. Nobody can build new, cells and we have some and there's needs all over. And I just want to use our space and our facilities to the best of the community's purposes. And if we can come up with a way to figure that out, I'm all for finding a consultant to help.
Chair, if I could, I think this has been a great conversation. What would be helpful for us as staff is let us take the email. Thank you so much, Commissioner Grant, for sending us that information. Let us take that email in this conversation and process it to what we believe is the next step. I hear a lot of agreement among the board to do some type of study. I would say the initial step of that is for us to get a cost parameter of what we think that study would look like. And if Commissioner Grant outlined those things and we know that there are consultants out there, we can just have some initial conversations to kind of get a scope. We can then bring that back and lay out, here's what we think we can accomplish, here's the price tag, and then get board direction if they want to at that time to move forward.
Well, and I think Ty and I were both agreeing that, if we were to put it out as an RFP with a scope and a goal, maybe we wouldn't have to put a price tag on it. They would bid us, because the other, in the past, that these kinds of studies can cost anywhere from $30,000 to $65,000, dollars. And so, but maybe not exact amount,
Sure.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my commitment to the sheriff, I didn't say I could solve this problem, but I promised that we would not let this conversation languish anymore and we were gonna keep plugging away at it. And I think there's and I'm committed to that because this is a problem that has to get resolved one way or the other at some point as fast as we can, within reason. So I think we have a lot of questions. There's a lot of information that's gonna be needed to take concrete next steps. So dialing in an appropriate look at this, I think, is the best thing we can do to get this, keep this moving.
Yep, we'll do that. We'll take I think this has been great for us to be here at the table listening. And I'll share that email from Commissioner Grant with the team, really with the whole jail crisis work group. And then we can narrow that down into the next step, whether it's an RFP and trying to give the board a sense of what we're looking at as far as the cost for that. Definitely want it to be competitive so we get the best deal possible.
Anything else? This topic?
Special thanks to all of you and those that weren't able to make it today, because there was a lot of participation in this important topic. We appreciate all the work.
Thanks.
It might be worth bringing Joe in to kind of, since I can't even remember all the details and Commissioner Fournier's got a lot of the same questions, like bringing Joe in, talk about that triage facility and the history
Oh,
and
sure.
what it does and what it could do. It might be a useful conversation to put on, connect to all of this. I think that's worthwhile. 'Cause-
Run by multi-care. is that what you-
Telecare. I'm sure Joe would give us a great background. I mean, it was, you know, the state of Washington created these crisis triage facilities, and I think it was around 2015. With the amount, thinking that that was what was gonna work. And then about a year and a half went by and, you know, and we realized quickly that that's not what was going to work. And then it started to fail. And so I would love to hear Joe come back and really talk about kind of the overall institutional processes that go on and the different kinds of things that are in the community that we can use for mental health would be great.
The challenging piece is that, like anything else, if you build it, you'll fill it.
Yep.
So it's true with jail space, it's true with mental health triage facilities, because what you find is when we ITA people to St. Peter's Hospital, they have a major incentive to get those people out the door as soon as possible. If we, let's say that the county, you know, bit the bullet and went and built a 40-bed triage facility for all types of, those 40 beds will be taken up tomorrow with long-term psychiatric care. Tomorrow, I could fill all 40 beds, and still have 100 people waiting on that wait list to get in there. So I think that's just the reality of, we're trying to solve major national and state problems at the county level.
I know why Maple Lane went from 30 beds to 60 beds to 120 beds, you know, that it's.
They'll
be full.
continuing to grow.
Right.
They'll be full tomorrow and they'll build another 40 beds and fill them. And yeah, so that's just the reality of local government, I think.
Do we know how long Telecare's lease is there or anything about their lease or anything like that?
Yes.
Oh.
I just.
Pure act. Curious about that.
Yeah, actually, there was a lease amendment signed that they have the lease through 2035, but there is the option to cancel it with a 120-day notice within 2 years of the expiration of the lease.
2020, 2033.
Yeah, that was just signed like 3 years ago.
Dang it, was my signature on there?
Yeah.
No.
The reality too, right? I
Take a
mean,
look at it.
If the county were to do anything as extreme as like evict, you know, that entity, you're getting 16 beds for major political fallout to then take 16 people who are in psychiatric care currently and moving them out for 16 beds, which I will fill tomorrow, and still have a crisis on our hands. So,
Right.
I mean, I think
But if the original intention was to work in tandem with the jail and that was built in there somehow, and we haven't leveraged that or managed that, then that might be worth reevaluating.
Yeah.
They are full. I think that bringing
They are.
Joe in, and having this conversation about how they are working, because they are working with, you know, within the whole system too. They're just also at capacity, and that's just a reality of everywhere we look. So I think bringing in Joe Avalos to have this conversation, I think would
You
be.
can invite Wayne too, Wayne Graham from the
Yeah.
prosecutor's office. He was involved and he knows the whole history and he tried to, there was a point where just a couple of years ago where the state was talking about doing something new.
Mhm.
I won't be able to describe it perfectly, but he tried to jump in and say, well, could we be part of that and run a pilot here and everything? And I was with some muck at the state, the corrections, or I forget the guy's name, Kevin something.
Kevin Bovenkamp.
Yes.
He's my
Yeah.
old boss, yeah.
Yeah, so we took him on a walking tour through it to see if it was gonna fit, and he worked on it on his end, and it ended up the state ended up changing gears and not deciding to do what they were planning to do.
And I can't emphasize enough, so, that in King County, they were going through these same discussions and that they came up with this idea of this crisis care center, right? This is a new thing. And they figured out they're having these exact conversations like, oh, we've got these triage places and we've got the jail and but nothing's working. What's going wrong? What is the missing piece? And that's what this this crisis center, if we can get it to where we need it to be, if we can fund it fully to where it really has the number of beds that is operating similar to the way that Connections is operating up in Kirkland right now, it will help the whole system. You know, it will, it'll alleviate some of the pressure on telecare. It'll alleviate some of the pressure I'd say the low and medium, you know, if we say low and medium mental health, folks that are going in and out of jail. But right now, and I think, and I'm just saying that to my seatmates here, because we have a lot of work to do to try to advocate this legislative session to get the full funding for that facility. And if we get that full funding, it will do what it needs to do. But if we don't get the full funding, it'll only help a little bit. And so, you know, hopefully we'll get there.
Awesome.
Lobby your lawmakers.
Yeah, yeah, we all can do that.
Thanks again, everybody.
All right, thank you. We will now move to the next topic. And it's an executive session pursuant to RCW 4231-10-1B. Consider selection of a site or acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause the likelihood of increased price. Purchase of a building, approximately 15 minutes. Is that correct?
I think we just,
10.
10, yeah.
10 minutes, board action may follow. It's 9:46. We'll be in executive session until 9:56.
And Brian? Actually had to run to the fair for a meeting this morning, so she's not available, but Brian's here and we'll.
CP related, I'm guessing that. Seeing Brian.
1 second.
Okay, it's 9:57. We've completed the executive session. Item 2 on today's agenda. No legislative action is needed. We're moving to item 3, which is commissioner items. And first up is travel moratorium.
It was requested, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, that we bring back to the board a travel moratorium concept, and appreciate Amy working with the prosecuting attorney's team to kind of talk through what that looked like. You feel comfortable reporting out?
Yeah,
All right.
so I'm working with the prosecuting attorney's team, in the best way to implement, a potential moratorium. Could be done through, a board motion, but it would be encouraged to be done through a resolution. There would be some sensitivity to whether or not it could apply to other elected officials.
Yeah, and that from a standpoint of that distinguishing between if an elected official believes that is essential for them carrying out their duties for them and their designees, that it would be hard to deny one of the elected officers from doing that.
Thank you. I was the one who actually brought this up, just because, again, when we're trying to look at all the possible savings, and it doesn't look like there's going to be much savings on this item at all. So from my standpoint, I very appreciative of the work that Amy, you've done, and the county manager and his team on this. But at this time, like, I'm okay with not moving forward with the travel moratorium.
The auditor, when I mentioned in my meeting with her that like she has staff that, election staff that can only get their certification at this like state conference thing, so, and which often happens out of Thurston County, so there would have to be exceptions of certain
Exceptions, and then
kinds.
so
And
it would grow.
once we've set the budget targets,
Essential
it's like
services,
I
yeah.
think each group can decide if that's a
Yeah.
good way to make their budget target and
Yeah.
not have to do it, is my sense of it. Commissioner Fournier.
Same. I think that it's hard to do anything in absolutes. So there'd have to be, you know, even if we did enact something, there'd have to be exceptions. But I would certainly encourage everyone to limit it to essential travel.
And Commissioner, you know, on this topic, there is essential travel that commissioners have to partake in as assigned to their boards and commissions. And so in the budget process was helpful in that it allowed us to go very detailed into the commissioner's budget and into the non-departmental. There's $10,000 that is allocated for commissioners' travel, and I'll be in the next few weeks drafting a memo that pretty much outlines that each commissioner would be allocated $2,000. I know there's been some questions about how much money we've had, and we've in the past used a one bucket approach, which is a little bit confusing for some folks who may not have to travel to the end of the year. And then there could be a time where they may not have funding available. So we're gonna look at past trending. That's something that we haven't seen with some of the allocations. Look at what's our spending trends for the last few years to determine is $10,000 enough. It is built into the 26-27 budget. So we'll just assign it 2,000 for each office and then track it that way. And I know there are a few requests that have already come in for travel that we're working through, and we believe that there's budget for that. So I think it'll be a clearer approach that we'll have more transparency in the future.
I have two questions about that. So I do appreciate, I think it's really good to have that kind of clarity for us, so we don't have to worry about it. It's just kind of set up there. My two questions are, would that would that budget be for commissioners' optional items, or would that include things where we have to go for our committees to places that, you know, I don't necessarily want to go for that, but it's my obligation because I was assigned to that board?
It would be for your optional items as well. That's what we're looking at. Is that the right dollar amount? And do we have to potentially increase that? But we haven't trended that out. We've just kind of taken we say, and it's a little bit awkward that then the commissioners are asking the county manager for approval. You shouldn't have to ask me for approval. You should know what your budget is and then make those requests. And I think that's the process that the clerk and the budget manager and I will sort out. I don't think in the long run that 10,000 probably is the right amount for the future. So we can come back once I give the budget team some time to look at trends, to do a budget amendment. And we believe there's an ability to shift some funding from one place to another. What is important for me is that it's an equal distribution. And then you know how much you have and you can make your plans accordingly. And because there are things that are not necessarily mandatory, but things that commissioners should attend for the enrichment of their position, for the work that they do in different committees, et cetera. And that's part of your roles as commissioners, to be most informed and effective for Thurston County.
Commissioner Fournier?
I'm good. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
I'm good with that too.
Okay, then let's go. So we're gonna we're gonna cancel our commissioner check-in this afternoon and instead have external board reports this morning. And Commissioner Klaus, I'll call you first since you said you had a couple.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to do a quick recap of the JazzCom meeting. I know that I gave a report on this one last week, but after giving it some more thought and going back and looking at my notes, there were a number of items that I didn't report on because I focused mostly on the budget, which was like the primary topic of our last meeting, but there were a lot of really positive things that were brought up during the meeting that I neglected to include in my report. So just a quick overview of some of those things. There's a new 5-year strategic plan coming that's due the end of next year. Benchmarks from the current strategic plan that we're operating within now were actually really impressive. So one of the goals for the current strategic plan was to perform 10% of spay-neuter surgeries on site and increase by 5 to 10% each year. But this year they were able to successfully reach 98% of spay-neuter surgeries performed in-house, which is a huge deal. And it's 98%, almost all of them. And that saves a ton of money and time having to transport animals to get surgery and then bring them back. So they were able to bring a surgeon in-house. And I've done a couple tours of the building and I think some commissioners have as well. And they have like a mobile unit that's out back where they have like a small surgery center for the spay neuters and any other minor operations. So 98% is really impressive. They accomplished their goal years out in advance just this year. So that was really good news. As far as other medical treatments, the goal was to provide 15 to 20% of medical treatments and procedures on site by 2025. And the result of this year is that currently over 90% of medical treatments are performed in-house. There has also been increased community engagement, which is up 30% with 9 events happening between August and October. And they developed a animal cruelty response team that's actually the first of its kind in the nation. So it's getting nationwide attention, and they put a lot of work into that program as well. And then as far as some statistics on their animal intake and field response calls, as of September 30th, animal intake has surpassed all of 2024. So we're definitely looking at higher numbers of animal intakes this year. And field response calls are also up for all jurisdictions. Olympia was up 11%, bringing them to 662 for the year. Lacey is up 22%, bringing them to 632 per year. Tumwater was up 7.5%, bringing them to 246 per year, and Thurston County's field response call volume was up 23%, putting the county's call volume at 1,240 this year. License sales were also up 4.35%, and private contributions year to date are $1.9 million. And
That sounds like more than, is that an uptick?
that's an uptick. They had a couple large donations from people who passed away. So that's not typical, but it does
Yeah, it
show.
sounds like more than I remember.
Yeah, it's quite a bit more, but
One time.
yeah, one time, we can't build that into the estimates in the future, but it was some kind of an uptick that was really helpful for this year. But even without those larger ones, they are still up from previous years. And jurisdictional assessments, just a kind of quick cost breakdown. Jurisdictional assessments account for 53% of their total budget. Some supplementary revenues include shared contractual donations, revenues from adoptions, reclaimed pets, and licensing. And those supplemental revenues offset the jurisdictional assessment. So the total budget for the year was 3.9 million. And of that number, around just a little over 2 million are jurisdictional assessments, of which 52% are shelter operations and 24% are field services. Recently, they also had an adoption event with waived fees, which resulted in 66 adoptions. And they have a relatively new positive outcomes coordinator who has been featured on the animal welfare panel at a conference recently in Yakima. And they also have achieved a READY certification, which I don't remember the acronym, but it's, I want to say it's racial equity and diversion and inclusion. And they recently achieved a bronze certification, and 65% completion rate for staff is required, but they actually had 100% participation. So all of their staff have become certified. And that's what I have for Jazz.
You know, back in the day, before I was on the board, the JazzCom used to do like fundraising galas, like some of the other,
Oh, cool.
which I know there's a lot of work, but seeing, as we had evidence of, like seeing how many people are passionate about animals, and it's probably a different group of people than some of the other,
Mhm.
nonprofits. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about going back to that.
That'd be
I'm sure
cool.
staff's like, like it's really rough to do those, but it might yield.
It's the benefit of partnering with or should be the benefit of partnering with a nonprofit versus us housing a public institution that does this, because we couldn't go out and do a fundraiser or something like that, but when you partner with a nonprofit, they have the latitude to be able to do that and leverage that kind of relationship with the community.
I don't know what the potential is, but.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't think that that's come up since I've been on the commission, so that would be an interesting concept to bring up. And I think they're kind of fun, but I know it's a lot of staff work. I wouldn't have to carry the load for that, but.
Okay, what else do you have?
So also, we had a regional housing council meeting, and there were a few items on the agenda. We are kind of winding down on our follow-up efforts from the retreat we had earlier this year. We kind of broke it out into different sections, and there was a little bit of challenge getting the facilitators together and getting everyone's schedule to work out. We wanted to do them in person. We were able to do the first one this year in person, and we've had follow-up sessions throughout the year. The county manager was able to attend Regional Housing Council last week, which was really awesome. Thank you for your input. It was really cool to have the county manager participating in the conversations around the mission and vision and kind of seeing what a county perspective really looks like. It was great participation. So as far as the retreat progress, the last regional housing council, this one we just had, we're getting pretty close to finalizing the mission statement. We had a draft mission statement that the tech team put together, and we went over that with the full council and got some feedback. And based on that feedback, the tech team's gonna go back and finalize the mission statement. So that's almost done. And the draft mission statement that we had, if I can find it. Okay, so the draft mission statement that we started with at the beginning of last week's meeting was the Regional Housing Council leads a collaborative regional effort to increase affordable housing and housing stability and reduce homelessness in Thurston County by advising decision makers, advancing regional goals, and educating the public. So we kind of broke that down piece by piece and worked through that. And so we'll see a final copy of that mission statement coming forward soon. Let's see, what else? So the next conversation will be about governance structure. There have been some discussions throughout the last couple of years on the governance and how that works within the Regional Housing Council. And now that we have the vision and the mission and a set of values, we're gonna kind of go into that conversation and see what, if any, changes need to be made there. One example of a change that's been proposed that there's been some back and forth conversation on is whether or not advisory board members get a vote. So we have our Homeless Services Advisory Board, we have our Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee, and our Affordable Housing Advisory Board, and they have representatives that come to the Regional Housing Council meetings, but they don't get a vote. So that's a conversation we've had, and any changes like that would require a change to the ILA. So if changes like that are proposed, then I would bring that back after the next RHC meeting and see what the board thinks about potentially changing the ILA. I think that would be the process. It might be different if staff want to take a different path, but either way, some of those specific changes would be brought to the board to discuss a change in the ILA. And let's see, what else? And then I can't remember, did the county manager give an update on the Percival Canyon closure to the Board of County Commissioners? Has that happened? I can't remember if that was a different meeting or,
Not verbally, I believe we sent out an email.
okay,
And then signaled that Olympia is in communication with us. and
Okay.
the Email went out, go free.
okay, perfect. Yeah, so we had the city of Olympia come to last week's RHC meeting and give just a quick update on the closure of the Percival Canyon encampment over by the Auto Mall. And they, the effort spanned approximately over a 16-month period and included collaboration with regional partners, service providers, and the Department of Commerce. As part of the closure process, outreach teams used the by name list, which has been kind of a typical process we've seen in camp closures throughout the county. They used this list to identify individuals residing at the encampment and match them with available housing and shelter options. And there were some discrepancies between the numbers that were on the by name list, which I think closed, I want to say in the spring of this year, and the actual number of people, because more people came to that location after the by name list was created. So there were some individuals that were not offered housing, and there was also a family, I think, with a teenage child that was, I don't believe, offered housing. They weren't on the by name list, but I know that partners who were coordinating that effort did try to work with each person and make contact with each person. And Northwest Justice Project and Olympia Mutual Aid Partners were mentioned as key partners in this process, assisting with these requests. So I know for some folks who were displaced as a result of the closure and not offered housing, are working with representatives from Northwest Justice Project to figure out path forward for those individuals. I think that's it for the Percival Canyon closure, but they did mention that the next camp they'll be looking at is the Jungle, which is right here by our building, and it's increased quite a bit over time. And the last update I had was that there are about 250 people at that camp. So that's gonna be a big one. And I asked the city what the timeline looks like for that one, because clearly that's gonna need a lot of regional coordination, and there will need to be options for people to go. So we asked kind of about a timeline and the city didn't really have a solid idea on the timeline because they're just beginning those discussions, but they did acknowledge that it's gonna take a lot of regional coordination. So I hope that there's a realistic timeline estimate when that starts kind of coming forward because it will take some time to do it properly. So that's kind of what they're turning their attention to next. And that's all I've got for RHC. Are there any questions about that stuff? Okay. And then I have two more. So Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative met this week. We had a really nice presentation from the People's Economy Lab about community assemblies. And that was a really good presentation where they kind of talked about different examples of participatory models of like co-governance and how these practices can influence the way communities work together to kind of make collective policy decisions and co-create programs that really meet the community needs. And there are different kinds of community assemblies. They talked about citizens assemblies, which are initiated by government. So like think tanks, research entities, and citizen assemblies, like I'm thinking like the CAW and groups where maybe some of our advisory boards could fall under this category, where the government really puts the structure in place and decides who's part of it and who participates in it. Some of those have been impactful, but they also, in some cases, haven't seen a lot of impact because government decisions aren't always swayed by the work of those groups. And so you can put a group together and they can feel like their voices weren't heard. And we've seen examples of that throughout the region over time. But sometimes they can be effective. And they also talked about movement assemblies, which are more grassroots style mobilizing, and then community assemblies, which are a hybrid model that kind of combines components of both of the previous models. But it was really nice to have this conversation kind of in a time where there's a lot of financial uncertainty and talking about different ways that the community can get together and create change with minimal resources. So, but then there was also an acknowledgement that the CAW representative brought back kind of at the end to remind us that even though some of these concepts are really inspiring and they can get changed to happen, they still need resources. So even the movement assemblies or community-led initiatives that aren't led by the government still need resources to be able to be really effective and provide accessibility to people for participation. So that was a good presentation. We also had updates to the TCMC ILA based on our conversations that happened at our retreat last month. And a brief overview of the amendments to the ILA were reported out. And they included summaries that really kind of highlighted the flexibility that's being created now around timelines and meeting frequencies for the CAW. There's no longer going to be a new ILA required for each regional initiative. So like for Energize Thurston, which we saw take place over the course of several months this year, it was really successful. Initiatives like that require new ILAs. So that's no longer going to be a requirement. There will be flexibility to kind of kickstart some of these initiatives without having to draft a whole ILA. We also made some changes that reduce administrative workload on staff so they can really focus on the implementation of regional initiatives. And so lots of positive changes there. I also gave some updates for our jurisdiction on, I mentioned that the comprehensive plan public hearing is coming up on November 4th. I gave an update on the home energy score model ordinance, the new Tenino EV chargers that are online now, public health solar plus storage project, and a healthy forest project update. The chair also asked all jurisdictions to kind of give a status of their ILA update discussions. So for ours, I think we'll be seeing this come forward on a future agenda. And an e-brief may be sent out to the board. I think staff are kind of working through that. So we should see some information come forward to the board about the ILA. So you'll have more info in your emails. And we also, so the city of Olympia said that they're gonna bring the ILA update discussion to their council on November 18th. Lacey also is on that same timeline. They'll be talking about it on the 18th. And Carolyn Cox from Lacey City Council mentioned that their draft budget for next year calls for 200,000 for climate. So I thought that was a good piece of information for us to have. And Tumwater said that they will be having a lot of different conversations about climate at their November 3rd meeting with a focus on collaboration and showcasing regional efforts. The CA gave an update as well. They shared that they've met twice since the last TCMC meeting, and they've been discussing ways to take on more community-led initiatives, which kind of dovetails with the conversation we had about citizen assemblies, but resources are lacking, so they're seeking ideas on how to make this possible. And a couple interesting things that I thought Tumwater shared was that they will be keeping their grant for their urban forestry program, despite the word equity being in the title, so that was good. Federal funding still coming down, even though we've heard kind of some different narratives around what the federal government's doing. And we've seen the impacts around language in different agreements and projects. And then there's a event happening related to community assemblies at ASHO on November 12th from 5:40 PM to 8:30 PM, and childcare will be provided. So if anyone's interested, there's an event happening there. The last update I have is related to the South Sound Military Communities Partnership. Last week I gave an update that I attended a behavioral health forum with that partnership in Lakewood. And that was a really successful forum. And I was looking forward to our upcoming November 13th meeting. We only have one annual meeting and then some of the subcommittee events like the behavioral health forum. But we just got word this week that the elected officials council scheduled for November 13th has been postponed due to a new Department of Defense directive that limits interactions between military personnel and elected officials. So that will be rescheduled once guidance allows, but that was a big concern because we're like in a time where there's a lot of momentum behind more partnerships. I think some might remember that during my update last week about the Behavioral Health Forum, I shared that a lot of people on the Mentimeter survey responded that they see little to no collaboration happening between military behavioral health care and community behavioral health care. And so there's been a lot of work, not just in behavioral health, but all across the board, trying to increase collaboration between local jurisdictions and JBLM. And it sounds like this new directive from the Department of Defense is gonna put a halt to a lot of that work. And that's concerning because one thing that really stuck out to me about the Behavioral Health Forum was that there's been such an increase in youth suicides, especially among youth who are children of active duty service members and veterans. So without that increased collaboration between different jurisdictional entities, I'm really concerned about the damage that could be caused, but I thought the board would want to know that that's going on. So hopefully they'll get that resolved and I'll be bringing updates to the board.
I got that as well. I was supposed to speak at that for the first time, so.
Oh, you were?
Yep. I will not be now. Mr. Grant.
Well, you covered a lot, and I actually, since the last time, I haven't actually had much of anything since the last time we saw each other. I will just mention, since we're in a public meeting, that coming up, I mean, I have nothing to report out on boards, but coming up on November 3rd, and I'm encouraging any of you to maybe come to, that we'll be having a civics trivia night out at Yelm at the community center at 6:30 PM. That's next Monday night. And it's gonna be quite the competition and lots of local participation. So encouraging people to come out. I will just mention one board, that Transportation Policy Board, again, I think I've already mentioned it, but I want to say it one more time. Transportation Policy Board has sent out, and I'm on the recruitment body to try to recruit for 3 open positions. We have 2 business positions and 1 community representative position. And we're looking for people to apply. And so I just want to mention that to you guys. If any of you know anyone that would be good, we're looking for 2 different kinds of business representatives of
Which board?
Transportation Policy Board. Yeah, and then a new community representative. So
When are applications due?
they are due, I think we left it open I think we're gonna do our first review next month.
Thank you. Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. I had to go around quite a bit last week, the risk pool. I let the board know, I did get outvoted on the 20%. So there will be a 35% increase in our insurance, coming up. Brian will be, working with Summer on that and so we will hopefully get more information up. It was, interesting, the makeup of the board is mostly, staff members. There's only a few commissioners, so, and there was inclination to do that increase. So that, for us, it comes out, to, what did I say?
515,000.
515,000 additional dollars, that I don't know. So I'm hoping, Brian had a couple of ideas, and that he was gonna talk over with Summer, and so hopefully,
Couch cushions are tapped.
yeah,
There's nothing left.
I know, but this is just part of it where, these are just the cost of doing business, and we're gonna probably be seeing this from all across. County Road Administration Board met in Yakima. The board is still getting, is trying to work with the state, well, they are a state agency, but they're working with the Office of the Treasurer's Office, because as, I'm not sure if you all remember when I reported back that when the County Road Administration Board got audited, the auditor's office realized that basically the formula that the treasurer's office was doing to do the disbursements for our county road fund was not correct. And so they have basically in the last couple of years, we've been shorted $120 million. They are not willing to go beyond a certain date, but the state has been kind of really quiet on how they're going to refund counties back that funding. And so that's a good news, but we don't know yet. WASAC has started cooperating with the County Road Administration Board and trying to get some answers from the state on when we're gonna get that funding back. But that is hopefully
Been
gonna
like,
be
it was a miscalculation for like years.
years.
So that's
many
why
years.
it's frustrating when they're like, well, we'll refund you the last 5 years.
What
but
they're doing,
The other
yeah.
20 years, you're just, so,
Oops,
so it's like, yeah.
It basically comes down, so
we got a promotion.
for the ferry counties and how ferry counties were calculated into the formula, that just kind of, it was all wrong. And so, yeah, we've been shorted. And yeah, they're not willing to look past the 5 years, unfortunately. We also had really good presentations from Yakima County and Benton County, and they also talked about their road shift and their road diversions and, how it's impacting their road system. We got a presentation from Senator King, and he gave us kind of an overview on the state's road transportation budget, which is not looking good either. So that was it. I had a Board of Health, not Board of Health, BHASO exit interview for the 2023 audit. So Commissioner Munster, I'm still hanging, being sure you were a good board member during that time. We just did 2022.
Oh, really?
They're starting 2022 and then starting 2023, they're very far behind. So they're starting many consecutive ones at once. And then while it's not one of our appointed ones, I wanted to report on the National Association of Hispanic County Officials. Joined that emergency meeting last week because they were going to talk about unpermitted food vendors. I thought they were going to talk about the permitting system as a whole, but actually it's something that's happening all over Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, I mean, all over the US. There were commissioners talking about. Basically, there is it's a trafficking system that's emerging from California, where there is these, basically there are taco stands, unpermitted taco stands that are popping up. It's happening all over Washington state too. I spoke with Jamie from Wasalfo, that basically people are usually they're farm workers who paid for kind of a safe exit out of California, now are being like trafficked and forced to work in these taco stands to pay off that debt. And so we heard from King County, Teresa Mosqueda, and we also heard from Coconino County, from Arizona, Jeronimo Vasquez. And we had people, commissioners there also from LA County, and they were all sharing their experiences about kind of just the impact that they're all facing throughout this. So it was really eye-opening to, to see just how this is just affecting everywhere. There is going to be future meetings at Wasalfo, the Subcommittee for Environmental Health. And I know that our Public Health and Social Services team is been involved in these conversations and are tracking this conversation as well. And King County is a little farther ahead than what we are, and very thankful for them to bringing kind of the situation to light. So very sad what is happening. We had, of course, Thurston County is also being impacted. I think we saw the article a couple weeks ago about how a non-permitted food vendor got shut down, and that's kind of part of that chain. So we're kind of there in the mix.
Is there something that our public health could do or be like to, like how do we
Yeah, so
respond to this?
our environmental health staff have taken a human trafficking training. And that's kind of that's what I learned from Jamie Stevens from Wasalfo. She was giving me all this information. She's like, yeah, Thurston County's team has taken this, human trafficking training. So, I have, asked Jamie, they're going to be setting up a meeting in November for all environmental health people across the state to have this conversation on how to approach these, because there's also some coordination happening with law enforcement. So there's going to be more of a statewide coordinated effort that's going to be taking place.
So I'll say just tightly, this is an emerging topic. There's more to come, but our environmental health people have done an excellent job of these unpermitted food vendors and doing what is it in their scope currently.
Commissioner Fournier, anything?
I attended the EMS council meeting. I ended up having to get in there a little late because I was at another meeting with the one with the AG's office before that. So I caught kind of the second half of that. And they talked about the ALS contract. They talked about how our budget, preliminary budget proposal will affect them, and kind of went over that. That was good. I didn't get run out of the room. They were all very understanding, the different commissioners and council members. Then I hung out like an hour and a half afterwards and talked to Frank Kirkbrad, Lacey commissioner, fascinating guy. He's been around for like 100 years, so it was kind of cool that that's irrelevant, but I like sitting down with people that have been around in the system for a while. And one thing I learned that I did not know, and I'm taking up people's time that I shouldn't be right now, but the city of Lacey, according to his history, was actually founded by the Lacey Fire District commissioners in response to what they felt was encroachment by the city of Olympia's utilities at the time, when supposedly Olympia went and allowed their water system from McAllister Springs to serve Tanglewild. And the folks in Lacey thought that meant Olympia was like moving into what was then a fairly rural area. And so then the Lacey Fire District commissioners and volunteer firefighters got together and founded the city of Lacey in defense.
It all goes back to Tango Wild.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. Cause there's something in there where when you serve, when you then serve that utility, it opens up some annexation portal or something back in the sixties or fifties or what have you. And then the other, I guess, news or not news, but we all know it. We've got the elected official social tonight. The county took possession of the Billy Frank Jr. mock-up statue, and it's sequestered away here at the atrium in a secret location in a vault where it will be prepared to be displayed tonight, and then it'll be displayed kind of in conjunction with the proclamation that we're doing on November 4th for Native American Heritage Month. And the statue's pretty cool, so, yeah.
Awesome.
Is that the one that was in Danny Heck's office?
No, this one's
Bigger?
this tall. I think the one that was in Denny's office was only about this tall. Ellen Massey drove to Spokane yesterday
Oh.
and picked this thing up and brought it back, so.
Yay,
give her a-
Ellen.
Yeah, give her a thank you. She had a big adventure yesterday.
Wow.
See, we have to travel more, train's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Okay, all I wanted to report on was that I went to the South Sound Developmental Disabilities Forum, and public health staff were there and did a good job, and our proclamation for Disabilities Month was like, it wasn't actually, I thought it was our staff, it was actually the gal who sort of organizes that whole forum was so proud of it. She like blew it up on this huge board and had it displayed right next to the table. So that was pretty cool. See our signatures there. And in the past, I went last year and there were 3 or 4 legislators there, but this year there were none. So I was kind of bummed about that. But Marilyn Strickland's office sent a staffer, and there were some other people on the panel. It's really a listening session for South Sound disability families to kind of speak to the legislators and kind of tell them what their challenges they're facing and ideas they have. It's not questions for the elected officials. It's a listening session for the community. So I've been the last 2 years and it's been really valuable, and public health was involved. So I wanted to give them a shout out. They did a good job of providing information and answering some questions. That's about it. I've had meetings and community events, but nothing to really report on business wise. All right, so if there's any other commissioner items.
Can I
yes,
just
Commissioner
touch on
Kent.
one really quickly? We all received an invite from Congresswoman Strickland. It's at the same time as the ribbon, I'll be at the ribbon cutting. I heard that Commissioner Fournier was going to be in attendance to that Strickland meeting.
Is that one of her like periodic check-ins with local
Yeah,
electeds?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's changed before, like, I remember when I was chair, right, it was like one representative, she wanted to speak for the organization.
Yes.
And so,
I did it a couple of times, but I've also had to miss it a couple of times.
and so I guess I just wanted to be sure that Commissioner Fournier or whoever's going to present, I'm guessing it's gonna be you, unless.
Is there anything we want him to?
Yeah,
add?
I'm guessing they're going to ask the big conversation is gonna be about the shutdown. I'm wondering, staff had sent in kind of some information saying like, at this time we won't be affected, but later on there might be. I'm guessing if that can be sent out on maybe potential impacts for Commissioner Fournier to kind of report on.
When's the meeting?
It's tomorrow
Tomorrow.
afternoon while we're doing the ribbon cutting for the ballot processing center.
Gotcha. Okay, I can forward you the information we had, and see if there's any updates. I don't know, we haven't heard if there are at this point. But we can re-forward the email about the shutdown impacts.
thank you.
Josh and Jennifer did a great job rounding up with the departments.
I've been to one of these before, and it's a pretty big group.
Yeah.
So like if you don't want to say anything, like you're not gonna be put on the spot, but there's an opportunity, yeah, to highlight issues if you've got something.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, she goes by them really quick too, so. She gives a report out and then she asks for.
Yep. Yeah, it's good to attend if there's somebody available. All right, cool, excellent. And so we have no commissioner check-in today. We'll see everybody back next week.